Right, so today's job, or this evening's job actually, it's about 9 o'clock in the evening at the moment, so I'm just going to get started tonight, is going to be to remove the rear subframe. So we're going to take the rear subframe out, give it a complete refresh. It's going to be sent away to be stone chipped and then powder coated. I'll show you in a minute. The subframe is actually damaged at the back, where I think what's happened is I know it stood in a garage for 10 years and then was recommissioned. I'm assuming it was probably forward facing into the garage and the brakes were seized, because it looks like they put a hook up underneath the back onto the rear part of the subframe, dragged it backwards, and they bent the rear valance and they bent the rear subframe backwards. I think the subframe is fine itself, but obviously until we get it out we won't know. So the first thing we're going to do, I'll show you where it's bent in a moment, and then well, first bit's removing the subframe. Take the exhaust off, that's already done. Fuel tank out, that's already done. We need to take the brake pipe off, the battery positive cable off, and the handbrake off, and the top suspension dampers, both sides, the top nuts. And then, yeah, I think then we'll get it onto a skate so I can move it around. So let's get stuck in. Let me show you where it's bent to begin with. So hopefully you can see that all right. Do you see what I mean? It's bent backwards here, and you see the rear valance is bent up. When I first saw it, I thought, what the hell's gone on there? Because I don't usually get bent backwards like that, but I'm almost certain what they've done is they've put a hook under here to tow it backwards. And if you look, the hook probably went around there. So that bent the subframe this way, and it correlates with that bend in the panel there. The actual subframe itself looks to be in very good condition, as too does the bottom of the floor, but it's all just about giving it a clean, giving it a refresh. I doubt there's going to be any surprises there, but let's whip it out and let's have a look. I've got to take it out to do that, really. I guess I could do it in situ, but as you can see, actually, when I look over the other side here, it's bent up. They've done the same again here. So I think this was dragged backwards out the garage, certainly more than once. As I say, I think from 2007 to 2017, it didn't turn a wheel. It done no mileage. And I've got receipts for it being recommissioned, and it said about the brakes being seized and that, so I reckon that's just where it's been dragged backwards. Let me get it up now, and like I say, handbrake cable's got to come off, brake pipe's got to come off, battery cable's got to come out, top suspension mounts or damper mounts, and then we'll put it on a skate, move it around, drop the subframe out, clean it up, powder coat it, chuck it back in, job done.
Okay, so I thought I'd give a bit of narration during the time lapse just to explain what's going on. So got it up on the ramps there, just covering up the front, again just trying to make sure we don't get the car dirty while we're working on it. I'm now going to go inside and just disconnect the front part of the handbrake cable. It's just held on with a 7/16 nut with a second locking nut, so you just undo it all the way and then just thread the handbrake cable back through the floor. So that's the front car part of the cable out. That's all we need to take off of the handbrake cable now. The subframe can come out with the handbrake cable still connected, and we'll take that apart a little bit later. I'm just disconnecting the battery positive terminal now. And it goes through a rubber grommet in the boot floor and is clamped in place onto the subframe, and then it fits in a channel from the back of the car to the front of the car. I had to get the little mini grinder out there because the bolts, or one of the bolts that holds the battery cable clamp in place, had just corroded and was just spinning. I couldn't get it out. They're only like a 8mm nut and bolt anyway, so they're pretty small. And then what I've found on later minis when I've done the subframes, the battery positive clamp is different, and you can actually thread that through the hole in the boot floor at the back, so you don't have to take the whole battery cable out. But on an earlier mini like this, it has a much larger positive terminal on the battery, and it doesn't fit through the floor, so you have to undo it at the front at the solenoid and then pull the cable all the way out from the front to the rear and thread it out.
I don't actually think I've done an older Mini rear subframe where the battery cable has still been sort of original and intact and not been cut before. So what people tend to do is just chop the end off here and put a new clamp, a bolt-on clamp on the end, but I don't want to do that. I want to keep it as original as possible. So it's actually a bit more tricky because you have to unthread the battery cable all the way to the front where it goes on the solenoid under all the clips, and then take the cable off from the front. But if you want to cheat, or what a lot of people do, is they just chop the cable there and then they stick an aftermarket connector on. But I want to keep it original, so we've done it the hard way. I'm now just going to go underneath. We've got the battery cable out. I now need to get the front to rear brake pipe undone, and what I'll do is I'll blank that brake pipe off so it doesn't just spill out the fluid everywhere. I'll either blank it off, or sometimes I just put a bit of hose over the end. Handbrake cable's off now, top suspension mounts, and then really it's putting it on the trolley and heel bore mounts and rear mounts, and it's out. It's not that tricky. So if you're wondering, that's what I use for blanking off the front to rear. It's just a union made up that's just folded over on the end. In fact, it's blue, so last time I used this was on Tardis.
So I'm now just going to unbolt the front to rear brake pipe from the three-way connector that bolts onto the subframe, and then we'll blank that front to rear brake pipe off just to make sure all the brake fluid doesn't escape out the master cylinder and make a mess on the floor. Next up, I turn my attention to the rear shock absorbers, just taking the top nuts off. And what you might find is the body of the shock absorber twists, but what you can do is if you reach around under the wheel arch, you can hold the body with one hand and then undo the top nut inside the boot. Just up in the loft now to pick up my little skate. So I have a little skate with some caster wheels on it. It gets used for moving engines around, and then I just have a bigger bit of wood that I screw to the top of it when I want to move a car around. So I've used that quite a bit. It works really well actually. It's the width of the floor of the Mini, and as you see I just use my kneeling mat there to go on it as well, just so it doesn't damage the floor pan, but it's strong enough to hold the back end of a Mini anyway. And quite conveniently, not by design, more by fluke, the jack fits underneath it, so you can jack it up like that as well. I'm just removing the shock absorbers altogether now, just to get them out of the way while I can. But what I'm actually going to do is take the subframe out with everything on it. Now in the past I have stripped down the subframes before taking them out. Just makes it a little bit easier to handle, but I was on a bit of a mission here and I just wanted to get it done. So wheels removed, and I'm going straight in now to remove the subframe mounting bolts. I very quickly just tried the nut gun on the heel board bolts and they all started to come loose, so I'm just removing the rear mounts now. And that subframe's pretty much ready to come out now. As you see, it's dropped at the back. Just need to take the heel board bolts out and then it will drop down. So get my jack up, jack it up, pull it out, and job done.
Right, well that is probably the fastest I've ever removed the rear subframe, and even doing it properly so I didn't damage the battery cable. Admittedly, the exhaust was already removed and the fuel tank was already out, but it was so easy. There are all 4 subframe heel board bolts, and just look at the threads, there's literally no rust on them. Literally 0 skiven. I just went straight in with a little impact gun. I thought I'd give it a try, and they just come out really, really easily. So I reckon that has taken me an hour and 20 minutes. So that's good. Just got to get this subframe stripped now. That ain't going to take long to do. And then get it along for powder coating. I'm just going to jack up quickly just to have a quick look underneath. See if everything looks all right. I'm sure it does. Right, so there we go. First impressions. It's looking really good. I don't think I've got anything to worry about under here. It just wants a clean off. Bit scabby there on that inner wheel arch, but I'm sure, as I've said before, it's surface rust. Yeah, I don't even know yet whether I'm going to paint the floor like I have done on Sprout and PL. I might just clean it off. With this car, I almost want to leave a bit of patina there. I don't want it to look like a show car, although it's looking pretty stonking under the bonnet at the moment. So I'm really pleased with that. I'm sweating a bit. I did get a bit of a sweat on. It's one of those jobs where I've been planning to do it all day, and then my mate said, "Keith, do you want to come and play golf?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, all right then." I was off work today, so I thought, yeah, let's go and play golf. So I went down the golf course expecting to play 9, and we played 18. So I didn't get back till sort of 8:30. Absolutely soaked because it poured hard with rain. And then you think, I'd set myself a goal of getting this subframe out today, so I thought, no, I'm just going to get on with it now and get it done. And thankfully, it has come out much easier than expected. This is interesting. These pads are rubber on later Minis. This is like felt. Look how clean that is under there. But I don't think there's going to be any issues with this subframe. It's just where it's bent up at the back there, and I reckon I can straighten that out with a hammer and dolly. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. The next one, we're going to strip this subframe down and then get it sent off for shop lasting. Thanks for watching this week. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a great day.